Well, hello, and welcome to Trash with a capital T, where we give trashy books and movies the love they truly deserve, and some deserve more than others. I'm your host, Bobby. New videos are posted every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you like what you see during the video, give me a like. Makes me feel good and helps the channel. And you know what? If you like what you see, subscribe. I can always use more subscribers. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about a book that I never thought I'd be talking about. I never thought I'd read this book. But then the opportunity came up in my office book club to read it. And I thought, you know what the heck? I've heard so much discussion about this book. And I've heard so many opinions about this book. So why don't I read it and form some opinions of my own? And that book is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. It's the first book in the Cat and Mouse duet. There are also some side books. There's one called Satan's Affair, which follows a side character named Sibby. And there's another one called Finding Molly, I think, and I don't really know what that one's about. I have only read the first book. I've only read Haunting Adeline. I am probably only going to read the first book. I'm going to start this review with a kind of caveat. I am not a big fan of erotica, and this book definitely is that erotic romance territory. It's also a dark romance, so we're going to be talking about some touchy subjects. But this is not really my cup of tea. Having said that, I am going to still review this book because I think it has some good qualities in there, and I think there are some strong moments. I think there are some weaknesses, and I do think it is something that's interesting and worth talking about. So for those not familiar with Haunting Adeline, the general concept, it's a dark romance where a woman named Adeline slowly falls in love with her stalker as he infiltrates her life more and more. But there's all this other stuff going on around it. There's a plot line about her great-grandmother, who she finds out also had a tumultuous affair with her stalker and was then murdered by who we don't know at the beginning. We do learn. There's also the stalker himself is kind of this QAnon type character who is a expert hacker who infiltrates underground trafficking rings and saves girls, but then also turns around and is terrorizing and stalking this woman. And it's an interesting mix of plot lines. As a book club book, though, this one was very fun to read. And it was more interesting because not everyone in my book club has read something as explicit or spicy as Haunting Adeline is. And it is explicit and spicy. And it is a book that is built for trigger warnings, which there are plenty out there. So if anything I've said has kind of been oh, that could be interesting, check them out. There are no real spoilers because I'm going to give you some of them now. Just a heads up, this book deals with the subject of trafficking. So you are going to be talking about children and women, and in some cases even teenage men or teenage boys in not great situations. Now, those particular parts are not especially explicit, but they are present, and they are unpleasant. I did the audiobook, so that made it even kind of worse because there was people doing voices and acting, because the audiobook has kind of a full cast recording. It's for readers who take on the different characters, and they do sound effects, and they react, and it was really, really an interesting experience for this kind of book. Also, you're going to be dealing with non-consensual sexual situations. That is actually where most people have a hard time with this book, and I do get it. This is a very specific fantasy for some people. It is not for everyone. Some people actually find this fantasy very distasteful and dangerous. I don't, for the most part. It's not something that appeals to me, but I do get the hesitance of some people of being okay with this. So essentially, the first couple scenes between Adeline and her stalker, he's a man named Zaid, are non-consensual. The first one involves, it's kind of like a slasher type scenario, but instead of it ending with a murder, it ends with an orgasm. The second time is she wakes up and she's bound to the bed, and he gives her all this pleasure. And yeah. Then the third scene we're not going to talk about because I actually found that one quite distasteful. And did not like it, and neither did the other people in my book club. But as the book goes on, the consent goes from non-consent to hazy consent to her asking him to actively chase her. Like, she realizes that the thing that turns her on and that she wants from him is the fear, is the chase. Which, hey, consenting adults eventually becomes consenting adults figure it out. So if any of now, when I say non-consensual, you have to understand how these scenes are written. These are not written to be gritty, violent assault scenes. These are, I'm going to use a term that people are probably going to say I'm going to use wrong, but it's kind of bodice rippery scenes where it's the, I can't, but I want it. Like, my body is saying yes, even though everything in my head is saying this is wrong. Now, the first scene is quite shocking. It has a moment with a gun that kind of recalls to mind the Emmanuel cigarette scene. And if you know what I'm talking about, you'll know kind of how that plays out. But there is some stuff in there that is shocking, and it's kind of shocking for shock's sake. There's a lot of B-movie, horror movie shenanigans in there as well. So it's, the tone of the first book is almost B-movie-esque. It gets dark towards the end. And from what I've heard, the second book is exceptionally darker, which is kind of why I think I'm going to tap out. But, you know, there's a lot to discuss there. So if anything I'm talking about right now is not your cup of tea or makes you feel uncomfortable, this book probably isn't for you. But I do know one of my coworkers who read the book. She is someone who really does not really want to deal with that type of material. And she made it through the book just fine. So you have to go in understanding this is a dark, shocking, taboo-pushing book. Now, do I think it's any good? I think it has its pluses and minuses, as with most things. I don't want to come out and just say it's bad, because I don't think it's bad. I think there are some quite interesting parts. The first thing is the tone of this book is interesting because it does kind of strike that B-movie vibe. It brings in some gothic elements. Adeline inherits her grandmother's house, so she's living in this giant Victorian mansion on a cliff, and it's all dark and creepy, and she's refurbishing it, but she's keeping it dark and creepy. Very Munster coded. The Zaid storylines are quite action-packed and interesting. I don't love Zaid as a character. I actually find him quite annoying because he's that super macho, I'm gonna claim you as my own kind of guy. And I hate those characters. And he is probably one of the worst. He bleeds machismo. And I don't know why, but I just imagine he kind of smells like sour milk. Maybe it's because I've met guys who think they're like him and they smell like sour milk. But he's just, I hate that character. That character type. I didn't hate Zaid entirely, but he's really hard for me to like, especially because he spends so much of the book being like, I am the savior of women and girls and I'm going to protect them from all this stuff, but then I'm also going to go over here and sexually assault someone. So that duality there is kind of frustrating. Adeline as a character. Adeline grew on me. I did not start out liking her. I found her character to be kind of overly crass to be crass. But as the book developed and her character rounded out and we got a better idea of who she was, I actually really enjoyed her as a character. And I enjoyed the side characters too. Daya, who's Adelaide's best friend, is an office favorite. People loved her. So there is a lot there that I did like. What didn't I like? Well, once you get to the midpoint, once the sexual encounters between Zaid and Adeline start, they take over the book, which I knew was going to happen. That's not a shock. But these encounters can last 2 chapters. And so you're looking at a good chunk of time, and these scenes just go on and on and on and on and on. So the pacing of the story, because the first half of the book is actually pretty well paced, the pacing of the story grinds to a halt for very repetitive sex scenes. Once the shock of that first scene wears off, the scenes kind of fall into rote erotica. And while not badly written, I did not love them. I think they could have been cut in half for the most part. And there's like weird ones just kind of snuck in at the end to just kind of pad, which is weird because this book is, actually have Goodreads up right here. It is over 600 pages. I can tell you that off the top of my head. It is 629 pages. It is not a short book. And it did not need padding. And those later encounters are kind of buried in some very unpleasant scenes. So it was really throwing me off. Now, I will have say the ending of the book is quite good. There's a great cliffhanger. There's a lot of action and adventure. Zaid is put in a serious situation. Adelaide is in a serious situation. You're wondering what's going on with everybody. So it really does set up the second book well. And a coworker of mine has already read the second book, so she's given us an idea of what to expect. And it's quite intense, but there is a lot of this book that I liked. I think H.D. Carlton actually has some solid talent. Her action scenes, outside of the sex scenes, action movie scenes, are really well done. And there's a couple of them, big shootouts and stuff like that. The scenes with this cult that Zaid is trying to infiltrate that is trafficking children, those scenes are really creepy and really unsettling in the right way. Like, they're meant to be unsettling. They're meant to get under your skin. And they do. I think those scenes are great. If H.D.R. Carlton ever wanted to move out of writing erotic romance and wanted to just try writing something that was a little more straightforward horror, I think she could do it just fine. Other than that, I would warn against the audiobook. While the performances in the audiobook are good, it is performed, which is very weird when you get to explicit scenes. Because there was one point where I was at a stoplight and it was a nice day and my window was down and the scene started up and I didn't get my window up fast enough. So everyone at that stoplight with me heard a loud moan followed by, "It won't fit." Spoiler, it fit. But yeah, you have to be ready for that experience. I'm not used to my audiobooks moaning at me, but this one did. At least there was no like slapping sounds or anything. They did avoid that. I will say also with the audiobook, because they try and make the dialogue sound like it's in a location, it sometimes makes it hard to hear. So I did kind of miss some things and I had to like rewind and re-listen. Overall, did I hate the book? No, I gave it 3 stars. I think for what it's trying to be a dark romance, to be an interesting dark romance, I think it did it well. Do I think it's perfect? No, it's bloated. It's way too long. There could have been some trimming, and you could tighten up those sex scenes, still keep them plenty explicit and fun and erotic for the readers, but not have them drag on, because that is my general problem with erotica. They get into the sex scenes and they just keep going to the point of being exhaustive or exhausting. And it's like, just move along. I had the same problem when I was tried reading 50 Shades of Grey. I didn't even finish it. I think I made it to the scene with the bathtub and I made it to that scene. And actually, that wasn't what made me not read it anymore. My frustration with that was the characterization, because the characterization didn't seem to go anywhere because it kept getting stopped by the sex scenes. I actually think Haunting Adeline does this better. Adeline as a character is given a lot of time to grow before all of the smexiness starts. So in that regard, I actually think this book is quite successful. Yes, check the trigger warnings. I am not going to give you moral outrage over this because I like a lot of questionable and kind of tasteless and shocking media. I think there's a place and time for it. And I think if you go with the right mindset, you can enjoy it. Now, I also know that it's good to take breaks from media like that and to take care of yourself mentally and understand where your limits are. So, like I've said before, but be an informed reader before picking up a book like Haunting Adeline. Do your research. There are trigger warning lists out there. I think there's a trigger warning list in the physical book. If not, they are widely available online, including chapter by chapter breakdowns. So those resources are there so you, the reader, can make an informed decision if this is the right book for you. And that's not just this book. The dark romance community understands the importance of trigger warnings. 1, because they want to warn readers and make sure they're having a good time, but 2, because some people are looking for specific trigger warnings because that's their thing. And for them, I say good for you. So there are resources out there, and the dark romance community likes to make them available so everyone can enjoy responsibly, which is amazing. All right, we're going to wrap this up here. So 3 stars, not going to read the second one just because I know it goes into places I'm not really interested in covering, but I do know my coworker read it, enjoyed it. So could be for you. All right, general housekeeping. New episodes every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you like the video, give me a like, makes me feel good, helps the channel. And subscribe. I can always use more subscribers. And as I always say, love what you love, enjoy what you're reading and watching, and have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.